What if I told you that behind the British Empire's vast military power lay secrets so dark, so carefully hidden that even today historians struggle to uncover the full truth? In this video, we'll unravel the mysterious covert operations, secret codes, and shadowy missions of the British Empire's war history mysteries that shaped the world as we know it. In the age of empire, Britain's military might seem unstoppable. From the Napoleonic Wars to World War II, the British Empire fought battles on nearly every continent. But what most history books skip are the covert operations, mysterious disappearances, and secret wartime experiments that remain unsolved even today. In this video, we'll journey through the shadows of history to uncover the British Empire's most baffling war mysteries. Imagine this. It's the dark heart of World War II. The Atlantic Ocean has become one of the most dangerous battlefields in history. German U-boats lurk beneath the waves like silent predators, hunting Allied ships carrying vital supplies to Britain. The British Navy at the time was considered one of the most formidable in the world, its convoys guarded with precision, strategy, and secrecy. Yet, even with all this power and planning, one mysterious incident would baffle military historians for decades: the vanishing of Convoy HX-231, often referred to by sailors as the Ghost Fleet. This convoy wasn't just any group of ships. It was said to be carrying critical equipment, military intelligence documents, and some even whispered experimental weapons that could change the course of the war. The official records claim it was a standard supply mission traveling from Halifax, Nova Scotia, to Liverpool, England in early 1943. 40 merchant ships escorted by several Royal Navy destroyers and corvettes, tasked with braving the treacherous waters of the North Atlantic, waters that had already claimed thousands of lives in what became known as the Battle of the Atlantic. But here's where things start getting strange. According to declassified naval logs, the convoy sent out a single distress signal on the night of April 5, 1943. The message was brief, almost cryptic: under heavy attack, position unknown, situation critical, and then silence, no further communication. No debris fields ever found. No survivors ever reported. 40 ships, hundreds of men, simply vanished into the cold Atlantic night as if swallowed by the ocean itself. The Royal Navy launched an immediate investigation. Search planes combed the skies for weeks, while naval vessels scoured the waters along the convoy's intended route. Yet nothing. Not a single lifeboat, not a single piece of wreckage. Officially, the disappearance was blamed on German U-boat attacks. After all, the German Navy had unleashed Operation Paukenschlag, Operation Drumbeat, where Wolf packs of U-boats roamed the Atlantic sinking Allied convoys. It would have been a convenient explanation, except for one major problem. German U-boat records from that exact time period don't mention sinking such a large convoy. In fact, post-war interrogations of captured German officers revealed they were just as puzzled about HX-231 as the British were. And this is where conspiracy theories began to surface. Some naval historians suggest the convoy may have been carrying top-secret cargo, possibly early versions of radar technology, or worse, chemical weapons intended for testing. If so, was the disappearance an enemy attack? Or a desperate cover-up by the British themselves to keep dangerous secrets from falling into the wrong hands? There are even accounts from local fishermen in Ireland and Iceland who claim to have seen strange lights in the sky the same night the convoy disappeared. Some describe what looked like massive explosions on the horizon, yet no official records mention any detonations that evening. Adding to the mystery, decades later, certain classified British intelligence files relating to April 1943 convoys were found to be missing from the National Archives. Historians who have spent years researching the incident often hit a dead end when requesting access to wartime naval reports, many of which remain sealed under the Official Secrets Act. It's as if someone, somewhere, didn't want the full story of the Ghost Fleet to ever come to light. Another layer of intrigue appeared in the 1960s when a retired Royal Navy radio operator gave an interview to a small British newspaper. He claimed that before the convoy vanished, a coded message had been intercepted suggesting a new type of German weapon might have been used, something capable of jamming communications and disorienting entire crews. But when pressed for evidence, The veteran admitted the documents he once had were confiscated by military police shortly after the war. Then there's the legend shared among sailors about the so-called phantom transmission. Whether it was enemy action, experimental technology gone wrong, or a cover-up buried deep within military secrecy, the disappearance of Convoy HX-231 remains one of Britain's most enduring wartime mysteries. To this day, the North Atlantic keeps its secrets well. In the shadowy world of wartime espionage, few operations were as secretive or as critical as the one codenamed Operation Trident. While bombs rained down over cities and armies clashed across continents, a quieter but equally deadly war raged behind the scenes, fought not with guns or tanks but with brains, stealth, and nerves of steel. This was the war of the Codebreakers, the men and women who lived in secrecy, deciphering enemy messages and outsmarting some of the most sophisticated encryption systems the world had ever seen. And at the heart of this secret war was Britain's own Operation Trident, a mission so classified that for decades after the war ended, much of it remained buried under layers of silence. It began in the early 1940s, at a time when the British Empire was reeling under the pressure of German advances. The Nazis had deployed the now infamous Enigma machine, an encryption device so complex that many believed its codes were impossible to break. Every order, every U-boat movement, every military plan was transmitted through Enigma's seemingly unbreakable ciphers. Cracking it wasn't just a matter of curiosity, it was the difference between life and death for thousands of Allied soldiers and sailors. Operation Trident brought together some of the sharpest minds from across the Empire: mathematicians, linguists, chess champions, and cryptographers, all working in utmost secrecy in a place that would later become legendary, Bletchley Park. Among them was the now famous Alan Turing, but what many don't realize is that dozens of unsung heroes, many of them ordinary citizens with extraordinary intellect, were recruited under strict confidentiality agreements. They were told almost nothing about the bigger picture. Each team cracked a tiny piece of the puzzle, rarely knowing how their work connected to the whole. But here's where things get truly intriguing. Declassified documents suggest that Operation Trident was not limited to Enigma alone. While the world celebrates Bletchley Park for breaking German codes, some historians believe Operation Trident had a far more ambitious goal-cracking encrypted communications not just from Germany, but from neutral countries, even supposed allies, and possibly from within the British Empire itself. There are hints that British intelligence feared traitors or double agents were leaking information to the Axis powers. To counter this, Operation Trident allegedly developed its own secret network of surveillance, monitoring diplomats, businessmen, even members of parliament, all under the pretext of national security. One of the strangest episodes connected to Operation Trident involves the so-called Black Cipher, a mysterious code intercepted in 1943 that experts at Bletchley Park reportedly struggled to crack. It didn't match any known German or Japanese encryption system. For weeks, some of the best codebreakers in Britain worked around the clock, yet the cipher resisted every attempt at decryption. Then, abruptly, the file on the Black Cipher disappears from official records. Historians who have tried to track it down run into the same wall. The documents are either missing or still classified to this day. What was in that mysterious message? And why did it vanish so completely from the archives? Adding to the mystery, several veterans of Operation Trident spoke in later years about secret back channels, where decoded information was passed, not just to the military, but to a small circle of intelligence officers whose identities remain unknown. Some of these officers, according to rumors, operated outside normal military command, answering only to a handful of top officials in London. Were they protecting Britain's interests? Or playing a dangerous game of their own? And then there is the question of the missing diaries. In the 1970s, when some Bletchley Park veterans began writing memoirs, it emerged that many had kept personal notes and diaries during the war. Yet, before they could publish, British intelligence agents reportedly visited several of them, confiscating boxes of papers. The official explanation was national security. But critics argue that perhaps there were truths in those diaries, truths about Operation Trident that authorities didn't want made public. To this day, parts of Operation Trident remain shrouded in mystery. While the world celebrates the breaking of Enigma as a triumph of Allied intelligence, unanswered questions linger about the full scope of Britain's code-breaking operations. Were they simply fighting the Nazis, or was there another, deeper layer of secret intelligence work that has never been revealed? Some even suggest that hidden within those wartime codes were messages about covert deals, secret experiments, or plans so explosive they could have altered the course of history if ever made public. While the world remembers World War II for its massive battles, famous generals, and the relentless march of armies across continents, there was another side to the war that remained buried deep in secrecy. A side hidden behind locked doors far from the front lines where some of the most secretive and controversial experiments in British history took place. These were the hidden war labs, facilities so classified that many ordinary citizens living nearby had no idea what was happening inside. For decades, the full truth remained sealed, fueling rumors, speculation, and conspiracy theories about what Britain was really working on during those desperate years. The most infamous of these sites was Porton Down, a remote facility in the English countryside. Officially, it was described as a research center for defensive measures against chemical weapons. But whispers from former workers and fragments of declassified files suggest something far more disturbing. Porton Down became the nerve center for experiments involving chemical and biological agents, some of which were so dangerous that even today, details about them remain under strict classification. Scientists at Porton Down were racing against time. The fear of Nazi Germany unleashing chemical weapons on Britain was real. After all, memories of World War I's mustard gas attacks were still fresh, and rumors circulated that Hitler's regime was stockpiling even deadlier weapons. To prepare for this potential threat, British researchers began experimenting with nerve agents, anthrax, and other pathogens, all under the justification of national defense. Yet, as later testimonies would reveal, some of these experiments involved unsuspecting test subjects, often soldiers, who were told they were participating in routine research for gas masks or protective clothing. Many of them suffered lifelong health problems, and in some tragic cases, death, sparking ethical debates that continue to this day. One of the darkest chapters involves the so-called Gruinard Island tests. In 1942, this remote Scottish island was chosen for a top-secret experiment involving anthrax spores. Scientists wanted to know if anthrax could be weaponized to wipe out enemy livestock, crippling Germany's food supply. Sheep were imported to the island, exposed to the deadly bacteria, and within days the animals were dead. The experiment proved horrifyingly successful. The island became so contaminated it was declared off-limits for nearly 50 years. Even after extensive decontamination efforts in the 1980s, many locals refused to go near the place, convinced that the soil still held dangerous secrets. But it wasn't just anthrax. Declassified reports hint at other experiments involving plague bacteria, botulinum toxin, and even early attempts at aerosolizing diseases for potential battlefield use. Some historians argue that Britain, terrified of losing its global empire, was willing to explore any weapon that might give it an edge, even those banned under international law. And yet, many of the files relating to these projects remain missing, destroyed, or locked away under strict secrecy laws, leaving historians to piece together fragments of what really happened in those hidden war labs. Then there are the rumors of human testing beyond official military volunteers. A few conspiracy researchers claim that prisoners of war, and in some cases civilians from colonial territories, were subjected to secret experiments without their full consent. The British government has never admitted to such allegations, but the sudden disappearance of certain medical records after the war keeps these suspicions alive. In the 1990s, when a few surviving veterans came forward with lawsuits claiming they were exposed to nerve agents without proper warning, the Ministry of Defense quietly settled several cases out of court, avoiding public trials that might have revealed more than officials were willing to discuss. Even more unsettling are the accounts of strange research into psychological warfare at these secret facilities. Some former workers hinted at experiments involving drugs intended to manipulate enemy troops, or even entire populations by affecting mood, judgment, and behavior. Files referring to mind-altering substances appear briefly in certain declassified documents, only to vanish completely in later archives, as though someone carefully erased parts of history that were never meant to be uncovered. And perhaps the biggest mystery of all concerns what happened after the war ended. Instead of shutting down these programs, some scientists were allegedly recruited into new, even more secretive projects during the Cold War. With the rise of nuclear weapons, attention shifted to chemical and biological arms as potential doomsday tools, and Britain's wartime research became the foundation for decades of covert experimentation, whose full scope may never be known. Even today, parts of Porton Down remain active, and while officials insist its work is purely defensive, skeptics argue that the line between defense and offense has always been dangerously thin when it comes to weapons of mass destruction. As World War II drew to a close, the British Empire stood battered, but unbroken, its intelligence network stretching across Europe, Asia, and Africa like a vast, unseen web. Britain's spies had helped turn the tide of war, uncovering enemy plots, feeding misinformation to German high command, and running some of the most daring covert operations in modern history. Yet, as peace settled over the world, something deeply strange began to happen. Thousands of intelligence files, many containing details of wartime missions, vanished. Some were quietly destroyed, others locked away under strict secrecy laws, and a few simply disappeared without explanation. Decades later, historians, journalists, and even former intelligence officers would ask the same haunting question: what secrets did the British Empire take to the grave? Among the most puzzling cases is the mysterious fate of certain MI6 and Special Operations executive files from the 1940s. These documents reportedly contain details about double agents, secret missions behind enemy lines, and even covert dealings with foreign governments during the war. But when researchers in the 1960s and 70s tried to access these records, they found entire catalogs missing from the archives. The official explanation was that files had been accidentally destroyed or lost due to reorganization. Yet many found it suspicious that the missing documents often related to the most controversial or morally ambiguous operations of the war. Take, for instance, the story of Operation Claverhouse, a little-known mission said to involve secret negotiations between British intelligence officers and high-ranking members of the Nazi regime in the final months of the war. Some historians believe these talks were an attempt to broker localized ceasefires or persuade German generals to switch sides before the Soviets reached Berlin. Yet, when researchers requested the files on Operation Claverhouse decades later, they were told no such records existed. Veterans who participated in the mission claimed otherwise, insisting they had filed detailed reports at the war's end. So where did those reports go? Work remained in the shadows. Assassinations of enemy collaborators, sabotage of infrastructure, and secret campaigns to destabilize regions under Axis control were standard tactics. Yet, when historians searched for documentation on some of these missions, they found entire gaps in the record, as if the events had been scrubbed from history altogether. One of the most enduring mysteries involves a British agent known only by the codename Seafire. According to fragmentary references in surviving records, Seafire was involved in intelligence work across Eastern Europe in 1944, possibly coordinating resistance movements and gathering information on Soviet troop movements as the Red Army advanced westward. But after 1945, every mention of Seafire vanishes. No personnel files, no mission reports, nothing. Some speculate he was killed in action. Others believe he was involved in operations so politically sensitive that his entire existence was erased from official memory. To this day, the true identity and fate of Seafire remain unknown. Then there are the so-called migrated archives, a secret cache of over 8,000 files the British government admitted in 2011 had been deliberately removed from colonial administrations as the empire dissolved after the war. These files contain details about intelligence operations, uprisings, and covert activities in colonies from Kenya to Malaya. For decades, officials denied these archives even existed. When they finally came to light, historians discovered many had been heavily redacted, with entire pages blacked out or missing, raising questions about what had been deliberately concealed before public release. Some former intelligence officers have hinted that the disappearing files may hide uncomfortable truths about Britain's wartime and post-war activities, truths that could tarnish the Empire's image as a force for good. Allegations of deals with former Nazis, covert experiments on prisoners, and secret interventions in foreign governments have all surfaced over the years, usually dismissed by officials as speculation. But without the original documents, verifying or disproving these claims becomes almost impossible, leaving a vacuum where history should be. Adding to the intrigue, a few researchers have pointed out curious timing surrounding certain archival losses. In multiple cases, files slated for public release under Britain's 30-year rule mysteriously vanished just before their declassification dates. Was this coincidence, bureaucratic incompetence, or deliberate censorship? The government has never provided a clear answer, fueling suspicions that some secrets of the British Empire were considered too explosive to ever see daylight. The result is a historical puzzle with missing pieces scattered across decades and continents. Each vanished file represents not just a document lost, but potentially an entire story-erased missions carried out in the dead of night, deals made in smoke-filled backrooms, decisions that shaped the fate of nations but left no trace behind. And as time passes, witnesses die, memories fade, and the truth slips further beyond reach, leaving behind only fragments and unanswered questions about what the Empire chose to hide from the world. So what do we make of it all? A vanished convoy swallowed by the Atlantic without a trace. Codebreakers working in the shadows, cracking secrets within secrets. War labs hidden behind layers of security, carrying out experiments we're only beginning to understand. And intelligence files, thousands of them vanishing into thin air, leaving behind only whispers of what might have been. Each of these mysteries points to one undeniable truth. For all we think we know about the British Empire and its role in the great wars of the 20th century, there are still chapters missing from the history books. Chapters locked away in sealed archives, buried in classified reports, or perhaps destroyed forever to keep certain truths from coming to light. Maybe the secrets were too dangerous. Maybe they were too embarrassing, or maybe they reveal a side of history the Empire didn't want the world to see. Whatever the reason, these mysteries remain unsolved, daring future generations of historians, researchers, and curious minds to keep digging, to keep questioning, to keep searching for answers in the shadows of the past. Because somewhere, hidden in a forgotten file, a sunken wreck, or a crumbling diary, the full story might still be waiting to be discovered.